Welcome to the changeover. I am Julian Price, a man who generally prefers his tennis served with a side of historical context and perhaps a bit less chaos.
And I'm Leo Sterling. I like my tennis served with relentless conditioning and a complete lack of excuses. We are here to keep you honest.
I am Arthur Vance. I spend most of my time trying to figure out why the strings on my racket feel like they are plotting against me, but I do love a good underdog story.
Indeed. And we are powered by secondserveaces.com, where the data is actually worth your time.
Speaking of time, let's look at the clock on Marco Trungelliti, 36 years old and finally cracking the top 100 in Marrakech.
It is quite a lovely bit of business, isn't it? I must admit, I am in a rather buoyant mood today after seeing that result. It feels like a validation of the long road.
Is it just me? Or does he look like he is playing with more freedom now than he did a decade ago?
It is not freedom, Arthur. It is discipline. He is not fighting the game anymore. He is just executing. That win over Moutet was pure grit.
Moutet is such a mercurial character, though. You never quite know which version of him will show up to the baseline.
Exactly. But Trungelliti didn't blink. He just kept layering the pressure. It makes you wonder why we don't see more veteran presence in those final sets.
Because most of them are too busy managing their social media instead of their serve and volley transitions. If they spent a few years grinding on the challenger circuit like Trungelliti, they might actually develop a game that lasts past their mid-20s.
I suspect you are right, Leo, though your delivery is as subtle as a double fault. But look at the tactical shift in Houston. Did you catch the Tirante and Shelton match?
I did. That 7-6, 3-6, 6-4 scoreline. It was a bit of a tragedy for Shelton, wasn't it?
Tragedy? No. It was a failure of the second serve. Shelton's check was written on that first set tiebreak, but he couldn't cover the clay court movement when the rallies went past 6 shots.
He seems to rely so heavily on that explosive power, but on the clay in Houston, that power is often negated by the surface's friction.
I think the string tension had to be a factor there. You could see him struggling to find the depth in that final set. It looked like he was launching everything.
It is not the strings, Arthur. It is the legs. If you aren't balanced, you aren't hitting through the ball. Tirante just kept him moving laterally until he forced the error.
For those who want to see the actual heat maps of those rallies, secondserveaces.com has a breakdown of exactly where Shelton lost his footing.
I'll have to look at that. It's fascinating how the AI-driven analysis there picks up on the footwork patterns we missed during the live broadcast.
Yeah, it's refreshing to see the data back up the eye test for once. But speaking of things falling apart, did you see the news about Sonia Kartal?
A back injury, unfortunately. It has forced her out of the BJK Cup.
That is rough. Especially with the BJK Cup structure being so demanding. Does Katie Swan have the game to step into that spot?
She has the grit. Whether she has the match fitness to handle the Australians on their home turf, that is a different conversation.
It really highlights the fragility of these squads. One injury, and the entire tactical plan for the tie shifts completely.
It's a bit like a house of cards, isn't it? You remove one piece, and the structural integrity is suddenly in question.
It's not a house of cards, Arthur. It's a roster. And if your roster depth is that thin, you are always one bad landing away from disaster.
Harsh, but perhaps accurate. I do hope Kartal recovers quickly. The tour is always better when she is healthy.
Agreed. It's just a shame to see the squad depth tested in such a high-stakes environment.
It is a rather sunny morning, isn't it? I must say, seeing my favourite player grind out that win last night has put me in a state of uncharacteristic optimism.
You're floating, Julian. It's unsettling. But let's ground you. We need to talk about Medvedev heading into Monte Carlo. He is hunting those top 5 points.
The clay pursuit. It's always a tactical experiment with Daniel, isn't it? He treats the red dirt like a geometry problem he hasn't quite solved yet.
Exactly. And the data from secondserveaces.com suggests his movement patterns are actually shortening, which is counterintuitive for clay.
It's not counterintuitive if he's trying to stay aggressive. If he doesn't shorten those points, he's just going to be chasing shadows for 3 hours. He needs to take the ball early.
I'm not sure he has the patience for that, Leo. He gets restless. He wants to drag them into his web, but on clay, the web gets sticky in the wrong way.
Well, speaking of messy situations, we have to address the Tsitsipas and Ivanisevic split. It lasted about as long as a summer romance in the 90s.
It's a disaster. Goran needs a specific type of player, someone who can handle the blunt force of his personality. Stefanos is, well, he's a bit more internal.
I think it's a shame. I wanted to see if Goran could tighten that backhand return. It's been leaking pressure for years.
Right. And if you're looking for the tactical breakdown of why that partnership failed, you really ought to check out the deep dive on secondserveaces.com.
They break down the serve placement metrics. It's the only place I've seen that actually quantifies how much Goran was trying to change the service motion.
It's fascinating. But look, while we're talking about pressure, we have to circle back to the British squad. With Kartal out of the BJK Cup, the depth is being tested.
It puts a tremendous weight on the remaining players. They need to find that grit. Maybe a few weeks of playing without the luxury of a full team would actually build some character.
Don't start with the character building, Julian. They're already under the microscope. They just need to execute.
I think they'll rally. There's something about being the underdog that brings out the best in the Brits. I've always been a sucker for that narrative.
You're a romantic, Arthur. That's your problem. But I suppose that's why we enjoy the sport.
I prefer the science. And the science says they're in for a long weekend. We'll be watching the stats come in live on secondserveaces.com.
Indeed. For the full analysis on the Medvedev shift and the rest of the Monte Carlo draw, do head over to the site.
And don't forget to read the breakdown on the coaching carousel. It's a wild one this year. We'll see y'all next time.